Hey everybody, it's Will here. Thanks for joining me for another tea session. In this episode, we're going to be tasting the Zenkouen Superior Sencha. So this is a tea that I discovered when I was visiting Zenkouen November of 2019. And I haven't tasted this particular tea in a long time because we sat down and did a tasting together, the farmer and I. And I liked many of his teas, and this was one that we selected as being one of the best for our assortment. So this is going to be a bit of a refresher for me. I'm going to kind of rediscover this tea along with you today. So I'm going to go ahead and take 5 grams here. I'm just going to go pour it in this dish here. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it here. Sometimes you can use a scale to really get an exact measurement, but after doing this for a while, you kind of start to know what 5 grams looks like in terms of leaves. So we're looking at the leaves here. It is a little bit lighter in color, so this is not a long shaded sencha. The leaves get a little bit more of this olive or light green color instead of this really dark green. So this is definitely going to be a little bit more astringent than maybe a kabusecha or a gyokuro, for example. But we're going to go ahead and try it out. So what I'm going to go do is take my kyusu, and I'm going to go ahead and put the tea in here. And then for this, I'm going to be using 160 degree water. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour some of that in there. And we're using, so just to go over the parameters, we're using 5 grams of leaves. We're using 160 degree water, about 200 milliliters. And we're going to let it sit for approximately 1 minute. Kind of see where that takes us. So some of these teas you can go a little bit warmer, some of these unshaded senchas, but I don't want to bring out too much of the astringency, only a little bit of it. So I'm going to go for 160 and see where I end up here. So let's go ahead and pour this out. No spilling that time, that's good. Ooh, a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to make sure to get the last few drops out because these are the most flavorful part of the tea. But you also don't want too much water in your teapot because it's going to overbrew, and then the second brewing is going to be a little bit more bitter than you might like. We're looking at this really cloudy green infusion here. A little bit surprising for me because normally these unshaded lighter senchas or less shaded lighter senchas have a little bit more of this golden or yellowish color to them, but here it's really looking like a cloudy infusion. So you can see here a little bit more of a yellow, not completely a green, but it's got this nice greenness to it. So let's go ahead and taste it. Oh wow, yeah, a little bit of this dryness to it, but there is that kind of steamed vegetable flavor. Very good, yeah, very smooth, very well balanced. It tastes similar to the Hagiricha sencha that we used to have. So this is definitely a good tea for people who like a tiny bit of bitterness, but it's definitely well balanced. I'm starting to get a little bit of these floral notes, a little bit of these floral notes here. Tiny bit of this kind of citrusy sort of tartness to it. It's very well balanced. I wouldn't say this tea is one of the sweeter senchas. Definitely a little more on the astringent side, a little more on the drier side, but definitely something that a lot of tea drinkers enjoy. It's really good. So let's go ahead and compare this to the second brewing. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is just take a look at the leaves here. Oh, wait, where are they? There they are. So you can see they're starting to open up, but they're not quite fully open, so they can definitely go a few more infusions here. And we're going to extract the flavor. So we're not going to need a full 1 minute like we did with the first brewing. We're just going to put it in for 20 seconds. Because the leaves are already opened up, they just need a little bit more time to release their flavor. So just going to do the same amount of water, same temperature water, just for 20 seconds instead of the 1 minute that we used for the first steeping. So the leaves are brewing now. It looks like it's going to be a really cloudy second infusion, if you can see here. Definitely going to be a lot of kind of particulates in the tea. It's going to be a pretty cloudy brew, I think. So let's go ahead and pour this out. Go ahead and pour this. You can really see it's a really cloudy tea right here. Make sure to get the last few drops out so you don't overbrew the next brewing. Now look at that. Super cloudy, even compared to the first brewing that was already pretty cloudy. You're definitely getting kind of a lot more of these bold characteristics. The second brewing, I'm not getting these floral notes like I got with the first one. I'm not getting like these lighter citrusy notes. It's really more on these grassy notes. Wow. I really like this tea. It's definitely something that would kind of freshen up my palate if I'm used to drinking like a gyokuro or a kabusecha. This definitely keeps your palate sharp because it's a really kind of refreshing flavor. A little bit of this tartness to it, a little bit of this dryness. So I go ahead and compare these two here. You can see there's a pretty big difference in color. The second brewing is going to be a lot cloudier than the first brewing. The first brewing is a little bit more of this golden yellow, and the second brewing is more of this deep jade green color. So definitely worth noting. So let's go ahead and see what the third brewing is like, because I'm really getting plenty of flavor in the second brewing here, and I want to see if that flavor continues in the third brewing or if it drops off quickly. So let's go ahead and take the kisu, take a little look at the leaves here. You see opening up a little bit more, definitely less packed in than the first brewing. We're going to go ahead and add some water to that. Same amount of water, same temperature, and then same steeping time as the second brewing because we're just doing 20 seconds here. And it looks like, just based off the look of the leaves, you can see I think that third brewing is going to be cloudy as well. Partially cloudy in the forecast. So let's go ahead and pour this out. Wow, yeah. Definitely a cloudy third brewing. So I would say it's even, here's the second, here's the third. Definitely even a little bit darker. We can check with this camera here. Get this out of the way. So you have the third brewing here, second brewing here. You notice that third brewing is getting just a little bit more cloudy. I would say the green is getting a little bit darker as well. So it's more of a dark green color versus like this is still maybe almost in the olive direction. But let's go ahead and see what the taste comparison is between the second brewing and the third brewing. A little bit on the drier side, these steamed vegetable notes coming out. Pretty grassy in the flavor, but a lot of people like that in a tea. Third brewing. Okay. It's actually getting a little bit smoother here. So this one's got these bold, kind of grassy steamed vegetable notes. This one, they're starting to smooth out a little bit. Definitely a lot smoother. You can start to get the minerality of the tea as well. Start to notice, without all these strong tasting notes, you can start to kind of appreciate how the tea itself interacts with your palate. Very good. The color is quite similar. This one, third brewing, is probably a little bit darker. But they're both very good. Definitely, second brewing is definitely a little drier. Third brewing is definitely a little smoother. But with the second brewing, you're going to get these stronger steamed vegetable, grassy flavor profiles. So if that's what you're looking for, the second brewing is probably going to be your favorite. So just to review, the first brewing had these nice kind of lighter floral notes, a little bit of this delicate astringency. Second brewing's definitely developing more of a bold characteristic, sticks to these kind of grassy, steamed vegetable notes. Definitely has the most power of the three brewings. The third one is actually going to get smoother. So it's kind of, I don't want to use the word creamy because it's not quite like a matcha or an okumidori, but it really kind of finds the balance in the third brewing. So I think just based off what mood I am in right now, I think I actually prefer the third brewing over the second, because the second brewing is just a little bit challenging on the palate, whereas the third brewing is a much smoother, much more drinkable tea. So as we're getting into the late afternoon here, or early afternoon, I'm starting to appreciate these smoother teas a little bit more. So this was the Zenkouen Superior Sencha. This is something that's going to be available on our store. And this is a tea that we picked up during our last sourcing trip. Unfortunately, we haven't been back to Japan for a while, but our most recent trip, we got to meet a ton of amazing farmers, and the farmer at Zenkouen was definitely no exception to that. You could really tell all the work that he put into, selecting the right fertilizer, tending to the tea fields. When we were there, we actually saw some sirop, which is kind of like a type of Japanese antelope, and they were kind of grazing the fields while we were there, and it was really cool to see kind of like a natural ecosystem taking place. That's really something that we look for when we're sourcing a tea. We want to make sure that they're not just kind of clear-cutting the land and just planting tea plants on it. We actually want to make sure that other plant species are able to grow there, and with those other plant species also a diverse array of birds and insects and even larger mammals like we saw on this farm. So we definitely had a good time visiting the farmer and tasting all the teas. This was definitely one that we thought was special, and we wanted to share with everybody. So you definitely should give it a try. If you really like these kind of drier senchas with a little bit of astringency to them, it's not overpowering. It's not like a super bitter tea bag tea. Not even close. It's much smoother, much more well balanced, but you're definitely getting kind of this dryness, a little bit of these lighter floral notes that are kind of challenging the palate a little bit, which a lot of people like in a tea. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this tea tasting. I hope you enjoyed this tea. If you weren't drinking it along with me, I hope you at least had something good nearby to enjoy. But if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And until then, we'll see you next time.